Namaste. So tonight the topic is being found. You know, in the born again Christian, that's the idea of being born again. Being found is in that category. The notion of God finding us, Jesus finding us. Being found is actually an experiential event. And it's visceral when it happens. It leaves an impression that's inexplicable. You can't deny it. There is this sense of specialness, of coming to something in relationship to existence that wasn't there before. And then it could be God, it can be truth, it could be Jesus, it could be Buddha, it could be a Hindu god. Whatever is your idea is how it finds an entry point. But we have to be looking. We have to have a prayer, a longing, a felt sense, or an aspiration for something that we don't yet know, but we have some idea of. You know, even the word enlightenment could be a sufficient idea. Even the idea of moksha, liberation, can be enough to build prepare your system for being found. Of course, it's helpful to know you're lost. It's helpful to experience the lostness of not being found in order to get clarity about the necessity of being found, because until that comes, there's just too many things you can do to pass the time. You know, a job, finances, family, obligations, responsibilities, you know, the internet, Facebook, movies, friends, a life. What do? We're basically learning to live with not being found. Finding other ways that can substitute. A friend who calls us up unexpectedly, or a family gathering where when you're there, at least for a while, you're not experiencing being lost. All these substitutes, palliatives, that we fill our life with, so that we don't actually have to be in experience, which would actually call forth what it is that we long for, without perhaps knowing it. The quiet despair, the longing, or the aspiration, the seeking for something greater than what you've been able to know up to now, not knowing exactly what that is. So having this being found experience, when it comes, there is a way that becomes available to you other than lost. A path, a purposeful thing happens once you're found. Something that wasn't there before starts organizing your attention. It starts giving importance to the idea that you have cherished without perhaps giving it a lot of emphasis. Maybe it was just a word. Maybe it was something you heard from someone. Maybe it was something you were exposed to when you were young. It becomes then the mantra, the mandala, the principle, the idea. Human beings This is how they work. The idea of that is what allows it to become distinct for it. If we don't have preparation, we won't recognize it when it would show up. If we don't have some formulation in our consciousness about something that couldn't find us, then we have to go through this process of that organizing so that we could find a way. Maybe it's as simple as no suffering, the end of suffering. Maybe it's just as simple as not being lost anymore. And what does that feel like? And how does that really affect you when you actually begin to experience being lost? You actually come to a kind of truth. It's the recognition of the part of you that is not yet found, and that is naturally going to bring up a quality of being, a quality of consciousness that we could call despair or suffering, true suffering. Not the suffering of somebody leaving us or not getting what we want or our bank account draining out or losing our job. No, this is the real suffering. The real suffering is our separation, is our lostness. And until the grace has come enough in our life that we experience the loss, then the call to be found is still muted. It has to be poignant. You have to be in touch with your lostness to have a large enough call, prayer, powerful enough prayer, a true enough opening for the foundness could come. Many of you know what I'm talking about. You either know the lostness or you know the foundness. And that's what we're talking about. This is the foundational structure of human existence that matters. It's not how successful you are in your life or how good your relationships are or how good or accomplished or capable you are or how miserable and forlorn and dysfunctional you are. All these are seemingly problems and issues pale next to our true predicament. I was found, even though I didn't know I was lost. When my awakening experience happened, January 4th, 1998, that was a being found experience. I had no idea such a thing could exist, but I knew in that moment that the universe gave me something. Scott Barber, the person, something. It was individual. It was being touched specially, as if the universe somehow found me without even me knowing I was lost. Irrevocable experience. And it didn't stop. It kept introducing itself in greater depth, greater fullness, greater immediacy and personal. The personal aspect of this was unmistakable. I didn't have an idea. I didn't have a Jesus or a Buddha or a picture. I actually knew Meher Baba, but that didn't show up. I had an idea called my spiritual teacher when I was 19, Meher Baba. I had certainly prayed to him. I knew I was lost at that age. I just forgot I was lost. I made peace with it. So I didn't know what had come. I just knew it was so extraordinarily special and true. There was no person that I knew of. There was no intermediary. There wasn't any form in my life that I knew of that had found me. So I have to say, God found me, or Divine Mother found me, because it was so intimate, so personal. I couldn't call it the absolute or truth. It was just too much love. Like, it was delighted in having found me. How can you not move into alignment with that? If someone loves you and is delighted to have met you, how can you say turn from that? Even if you don't have lostness. Utterly captivating, utterly convincing, utterly real and true. And it became the motivating principle for my life. From that moment on, my life had a purpose that was not based on the palliatives of being lost. Getting what I want, accomplishing, having my life a certain way. And that purpose has never left me. And now I'm the finder. That's what it did. Made me into a finder. It makes it personal. Intimate. Very, very intimate. Very available. Not this sacred bullshit. Not this worship bullshit. Very real, very practical, very tangible, very lived. Like, why are you staying addicted to the palliatives of being lost when you've been found? You know, that's the kind of guidance. What are you hanging on to that you think is more important than this? You don't yet really know the price of being lost. You have not yet learned the depths of the lives you've lived, never being found, or being found by another human being, and realizing after some time, yes, you felt better, yes, you felt no longer alone in the same way, but in your secret inner self, you know you were still alone. This is part of the preparation of being found, is to know the depths of your lostness. And usually that is shown to you over time, after you've been found. There is this inevitable process where you start meeting the parts of you that were actually lost, that you really believed were something important and useful and satisfying and nurturing. And recognizing that these are also just palliatives, compensations for being lost, that you're still, parts of yourself are still unwittingly addicted to, hanging on to, afraid of losing. Once the relationship is established, once you form a link with that idea, then there becomes a transfer, you might say, of something of the quality of the finder to that which we are in our lost condition, the person of us. Something of the quality of the finder comes in and starts waking us up, starts bringing to life the dead parts, or the parts that have given up in their despair, or in its obscurity, or it's in denial or resistance. They start waking up and you start experiencing greater depth of the nature of your lostness and how clever and subtle and convincing it is. So that you could actually choose the lostness over the being found. When you wake up to that, that's the grace that comes from the relationship you build with that idea. And it doesn't make any difference what the idea is. Any word you use or any phrase or any image that you may have, as long as you can hold it. If it's Jesus, then you hold the idea of Jesus, be a picture, or perhaps a prayer, or perhaps a mantra, or if it's Buddha, or Krishna, or Shiva, or any of the other practices, even if a mantra like Om. These can be sufficient to start building a link between you and that idea so that it can start finding you more fully and you can start experiencing being found more fully. And that's the purpose of existence. Is to be found, to no longer be lost, and in the process become a finder yourself, and restore something that was inherent in all of us that has been wandering lost in this wilderness, not recognizing it was lost. For me, after about 2 months, I knew I needed an idea that was more distinct. I was looking, there was something in me that recognized that the idea I had was not sufficient to fully bring in what was coming. And that's when I began to seek my teacher, seek a teacher. I have felt the call for the guru, the call for the living, embodied teacher. And someone who was a friend of mine, a Buddhist friend, said, well, this is my teacher. This is a video of him talking. And as soon as I saw the video, I knew I had found my finder. And the experience of this was, in its own way, just as indisputable as the awakening 2 months before. Except now there was a practical path forward. And I almost didn't care what kind of guru he was. It was just that you could use him as the symbol, as the idea, so that that which finds all of us ultimately could manifest itself within me. And that's the right attitude. The person who is a finder is not that which does the finding. They are simply the vehicle through which the one finder can come through and make it more available, make it more accessible, make the idea more distinct. So now, people who come to me, Shree is the idea. It's not personal, but it becomes the organizing structure for the idea in you that has the greatest effectiveness for that one true finder to find you. That's how it is. Anyone who has come to the place of not only being found, but being a finder, is simply an instrument, a channel, a tool for that one finder. They are in utter humility and surrender and service to let that principle express itself through them. That's what's speaking here tonight. Be sure, it's not the person who has the name Sat Shree. It's the finder finding you right now. You can feel it. You can feel the truth of it or not, depending upon how aware you are of your lostness. Or perhaps of your foundness. That's what brings the recognition, the appreciation. And there are then stages. Once you've been found, that's actually the beginning. The beginning of the true spiritual journey. Everything else before that, all the lives in monasteries and as priests and nuns and serving the world, has always just been preparation. But once you've been found, then there is this process of continuing to discover what's left that's still lost so that more can be found. The deepening and the enriching, the depth and the precision and the clarity and the fullness expands the more we move into a conscious collaboration with being found. We make ourselves more naked. We make ourselves more open. We become more vulnerable. We become more true. We drop our pretense, our protections, and our fears and our habits of being so that principle can further find us. We become open to that grace more and more, and the grace allows us to open more and more. It feeds on each other. The founder and the found move into a dance with each other that grows more and more intimate, more and more full, more and more total over time, and there are stages. The Bhagavad Gita describes the process of both preparing ourselves for being found and the process of being found. You know, there are so many teachings that don't fully understand how this works, so only teaches a part of it. Maybe gives us a intellectual structure or an emotional structure that gives us some approximation of being found, but it becomes, in fact, just another palliative. A palliative at a new level, in the idea of it, where the idea predominates over the thing itself. Or a feeling that comes from the vital body rather than the spiritual body, that substitutes for the actual lack of the direct finding experience. The experience of being found is love. Unspeakable, unrelenting, total, unconditional. You just as you are right now. Love. This love is what can come through the principle of truth in the universe. That's personal, not just impersonal. We can also be found by truth, the impersonal, but that usually is a train wreck. Someone dies, we lose our life as we knew it, we have a massive heart attack. That's what truth shows up. Not anything you would really think you would want, but it usually opens the door for us becoming aware of our lostness. So truth is cruel, you might say, relative to the part of us that still wants to stay lost. But it's actually a form of love that we don't know how to yet be with. That's preparing us for being able to receive the very, very tangible, personal relationship with that aspect of the universe that's personal. See, I didn't need to believe in a God. I didn't have an idea of a God. I had an idea of consciousness. I had an idea of, a principle that either I retained my idea of myself when I died or I didn't, and both were fine with me. That principle could be just what the atheists say, It's just you return to the original vibration that you emerged out as an individual. That was perfectly fine with me too. I had no idea of a personal God. As a young child, I knew of it to some extent, but I knew it was in my imagination. I knew it was in an idea from my human mind or my human emotions that was trying to compensate for this sense of fundamental lostness that I didn't know, I couldn't tolerate to be with when I was young. So I know, absolutely, utterly, totally convinced long before this state has come that there is God, once that being found experience happened. I knew it was really true. Nobody could talk me out of it, especially because it was kept repeating and kept deepening in its showing. And once I started aligning my outer life with that inner recognition, it just kept growing and deepening, clarifying. I didn't even know that there was something called truth. Like many of you, that's all you know. I didn't have that idea of truth versus God back then. All I knew was God, and that's all I wanted was God. It was perfectly fulfilling because the love was so tangible. The devotion it would bring up was so nurturing. It was all absorbing. I would sit for hours and hours in this intimate relationship with God for years. In one sense, it's never stopped. But I didn't know of truth. It wasn't until the beneficence of the God principle pulled away and let me experience what it was like with it was not being there, that I discovered the parts of myself that I did not know yet how to be with that were still lost. And that's when the truth showed itself. The love prepared me so that when the truth showed itself, I could embrace it. I could recognize it as a greater expression of the finder than the one that God had been for me up to that point. So there's two kinds of finders. There's lots of kinds of lostness, lots of variations, lots of uniquenesses. Some are more truth-based, some are more love-based. I call it awareness or experience. Some they're more open to the principle of strip away all the bullshit. Let me know what's really there. And some are just let me know you love me. You can know right here if I describe those two which you are, or if you're a mix of the two. Or perhaps you haven't been found yet, so you don't know. Ultimately, we are all found. Because all that is lost is an aspect of the finder. And the finder only longs to gather its lost parts back. So it's actively looking, be it truth or be it love, to find its lost children and to bring them back to itself. The universe is purposeful and it's benign. Even though we get thrown into this condition of being lost, thrown into this being cast out from our original condition of being into existence, and that this was the necessary process so that this love and this truth could be experienced, could be known, so that the finder could know itself in the found, and the found could know itself in the finder. And that is the ultimate play, fulfillment of this existence. Some of us are busily at work, staying lost or becoming even more lost. Not necessarily in this room, but in the world. Until they hit the bottom of the barrel. And then they get it. Or the universe gives it to them. To let them know the condition, the despair, the deprivation, the angst of being lost. So it's a prayer. It's an orientation of our attention away from the world of the things that we have had ideas about, that we have made a substitute for the true idea. The security, the comfort of friends, getting what we want, our accomplishments, the things we decided in our life we had to do in order to be okay, so that we could have a feeling of being loved by others or seen by others or be made special by others who are also lost, but at least it's better than being lost alone. So we have to turn our attention away from those ways we've learned to live with our condition and turn our attention to that which can find us. Once the foundness comes, that's the way you collaborate, by keeping your attention on that which has found you, making that more important than all these other things that you've used as substitutes before. That's the only way that it can come and establish itself enough in us that we can grow into its likeness. So it takes effort to withdraw our attentions to the habits and the adaptions that we've all inherited and all been conditioned by, from our parents, from our cultures, from our education, from our community, from the lives we've lived, to rip our attention out from those convincing distractions and substitutes to that which is really the only fulfillment. This is what concentration is. Concentration is when we exclude all other ideas but one idea. We make all other ideas lesser, and this senior, greater. And we live for the one idea until that is our all-encompassing focus. It becomes the concentration becomes the consecration of ourselves to that one relationship, one opening, one showing that comes to us through the idea. So we discard all these other ideas and we focus on the true idea, the real idea, the one that has found us, not us finding it. If it's us finding it, then you have to be wary, because the person, the lost who seeks to find, is going to shape what it has found to suit its adaptions, its palliatives, its habits. You're wanting to seek to be found, because when you are found, it's indisputable. It's not your effort. It's grace only. It's a gift only. It's a miracle. Something you had nothing to do with directly. It's an accident, a fluke of nature, a freak storm, a lightning strike. then that's found. You know it. It's unique, qualitatively, tangibly, in both your awareness and in your experience, that this is that which I was seeking to be found by. Until then, and there are so many people who think they have found something, and all they have found is another idea, a better idea than the previous one they had before, where they don't have to experience the depth of their lostness. And it becomes even a more difficult palliative to remove than the human lostness of our human life. So no matter where you are on the journey, this prayer, this opening to whatever the highest principle, highest idea that you can come up with, you need to keep in place. You should keep that in place. A longing for, an aspiration for, a call to, a prayer for, so that your whole life becomes a beseeching. The cry of the lost child for the parent. Find me, find me, find me. This is primal. I saw a movie the other day called Lion, about a young Indian boy who was separated from his mother, got lost on a train and went to a town and didn't know where he was, eventually got adopted and raised in Australia. And at one point he became aware that he was lost, that he had been lost. And he said those words, "I'm lost." And his whole life fell apart. All the things he had been doing to make a life based on his being raised as a foster child no longer could hold up. It was a substitute, it was a palliative. And then it became this anguished, obsessive quest to find his mother. He had no idea what part of India he had come from. He didn't even know his own name correctly. And it was this whole story about him going through this quest to be found. And as I was watching the movie, I had the feeling of the primal pain that we all have. We're effectively all orphaned children raised by foster parents, thinking they're our real parents. So it's there in each of us. It's an archetype. It's a fundamental design factor in the nature of our embedded consciousness, in our human identity. It's a temporary construct, this human identity we carry. But we can carry this for lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes, never knowing anything different, except varying degrees of lostness and varying successful strategies for compensating for those lostness, or unsuccessful strategies. When in 2004, my teacher had asked me to open a center in Sacramento. And when just right around that time, I started going into these very absorbing samadhi states that would last for days. And when I would come out of them, and I would slowly crawl back and become organized as a person again. And it would always surprise me that I would do this, because it was so utterly fulfilling, so utterly complete. And a thing that I found in myself was that I could not turn away from the cry of the soul, the lost soul. I couldn't turn away from that cry. I had to keep coming back to respond to the cry. And that is what motivates me. This is my organizing purpose, because now I'm a finder, and I'm looking for those who are ready to be found. And I can feel the anguish of everyone who's still in their lostness, not knowing it. They might have their explanation or their life or their persona that they have created that doesn't, where they don't have to feel it, but I can feel the anguish of their being, the anguish of their soul. But there's nothing I can do. The soul, without the collaboration of the person, is powerless. Unless the person can come forward and collaborate with the soul, there's nothing it can do but experience that it's lost, that it's separated from its source. This is our true predicament. This is our true condition. And this is the nature of this work. Said once again in a new way. But it's good to get back to fundamentals. Why people come to me, why people stay with me, what is the nature of the process they go through, how to be with that process, the context to hold it in, is this process of being more and more completely found until you too can be a finder. That's really why we were all born. We were all born not only to be found, but to be finders. To serve the world in that way. To be emissaries. Channels and instruments for that one principle. Be it truth or be it God. That would cleave away that which is still obscured in us, or that which calls us forward with greater love into existence. So I invite you to just be with yourself right now. Just see if you can feel something of the energy within yourself that we've been talking about tonight. The sense of being found, or the sense of the lostness that remains. Feel the anguish, feel the longing, if that is there, or feel just the energy. Just be within. Your body is able to know this. Your heart is able to know this. Your awareness, your empty mind is able to know this. Be with it. It's calling to you. It's bringing you to itself. Come home. Come home. I am the refuge. I am the path. I am the fulfillment. I am the treasure house and the imperishable seed. I'm the eternal, unchanging reality and the ever-loving, beneficent being that has always held you through every moment of your life, hold you now and will always hold you in its compassion, in its patience, in its unconditional love. Let's finish with a meditation. May Supreme's will manifest. Let mankind be found. All glory to Gurudev.